Hi, and welcome to Aging in Place for every stage in life. What if you could visit or have a home that would accommodate anyone at any age, any physical ability, at any time? How cool would that be? That's what we're doing here at Aging in Place. Why me? Because I'm a doctor of psychology and I specialize in physical spaces and health and wellness. Also, I love designing with intent at any age. Why now? Because we, the baby boomers, want to age in place gracefully, and we want our families around us as much as we can. And why you, the audience? Because we want you to experience what it's like to have a home that's safe, aesthetically pleasing, and that you can live in at any age, with any ability, at any time. I'd like to introduce you now to Aging in Place podcast for every stage in life. Hi, and welcome to Aging in Place podcast. I'm Dr. Debbie Lyons. I am here today with my friend Jim Keith, and it's really interesting that we're talking about dying today, and we're talking not just about the process. We had hospice come on, and it was really amazing. We talked about palliative care and options about quality of life when you're through the dying process. And now what we're going to talk about today is the next step from the point of view of both the family, children, and really what needs to happen. Okay. So again, Jim owns Keith Funeral Home here in Hilton Head, South Carolina. But as you know, we're kind of talking to everyone nationally. Right. And it was interesting, and even preparing for this, talking about, I didn't realize that there were other options available other than going through traditional funeral homes. And it's, being an old school girl, it caught me off guard.
Well, it's interesting, Deb, because, you talked about this being national, but when you think of the makeup of Hilton Head and look at where Hilton Head draws from, we have people here from probably all 50 states.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And so a lot of the stuff that we talk about, maybe they're here for 6 months, maybe they're here for 12 months, maybe they're just here as snowbirds for 3 months. But it reaches out, and we can talk to them, and they can understand what we're doing.
Can I ask you broad spectrum questions first? I'm 66 years old. My mom died 3 years ago. My dad's 91 years old. At what
He looks good for 91.
He looks pretty good, doesn't he? Oh, talk about irreverent and woo.
Yeah.
Anyway, at what point do you think a family should begin to consider what their wishes are when they die?
Well, that's a tough question. If you look at traditional stuff, you say maybe in their 70s. Okay. But you see people, I just have a guy today who was 60. Whoa. And last week I had a lady that was 47. Uh-huh. And while those people had existing conditions that the family knew,
sure,
that's the worst thing. When someone has an existing condition, then you have to say, oh my goodness, this isn't going to be very long. We have to go make arrangements. Well, that's a tough position to put people in because it's so premature. It's 20 years before they're supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. But in the 70s, I think it's a fair amount. I get people that come in and say, hey, mom's not doing so good. Well, how old's your mom? Well, 94. And
you're like, she's lived a good life.
She's lived a good life. But, maybe that's something we should have thought about 10 or 12 years ago. But people don't want to make that commitment because they feel that as soon as they say, I'm going to make prearrangements for mom or dad, that's signing the warrant, that they're going to go ahead and go.
Do kids typically do it for their parents, or at 66, I think because you've educated me, and you know me, I went to Keith's Funeral Home and I fell in love with it because it has a retail section, which of course we can't always have to take advantage of. Mm-hmm. There are amazing things in there. Yeah. And I think rather than being afraid, to be honest with you, we talked about it. I looked at beautiful urns. I looked at lots of different opportunities and ways to be creative and ways to really honor the way I lived.
That's exactly that's exactly right. You want to honor the way the person lived. And some people, you'll get these people that'll say, just throw me out with the trash because they're afraid to spend money. But when you look at that person, nobody's going to throw a loved one out with the trash. Right. No one's going to do that. But when they say follow mother's or grandfather's wishes or something like that. Maybe he was a veteran, and so we do a nice little veteran service. Maybe he was a carpenter, and we can bring some stuff maybe that he made, or a woodworker or something like that, just display. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it can be classy. And I'm a big fan of saying, if you spend a bunch of money on a funeral, you're mad at your money or mad at your kids.
Oh,
you know?
I like that. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's just a casket, for instance, a casket. Your casket that's $1,600 does exactly the same thing as the casket that's $5,000.
Okay.
It's just not as fancy and doesn't have all the decorations. The casket companies don't want you to know that.
Okay.
But when you put it in a concrete vault, it's going to last the same amount of time, theoretically. And who's going to be around in a couple hundred years to check, see if it's right? Cremation's taken over.
Okay. How has it evolved over the past 10, 20 years? And where do you see these services going in the future?
When I got into the business, this is my 30th year of funeral service.
Okay.
We were nationally, we were probably 7 or 8% cremation.
Okay.
Now we're over 50.
Okay.
And if you go into states like Florida, Arizona, maybe California, it's really into the 60s or 70s. Here on Hilton Head, we're almost 85. And the more money you have and the more education you have, the more likely you are to cremate.
And what is that just being?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just that as our families change, in the old days, people would graduate high school, go to work at the factory, marry their high school sweetheart, move down the street, and live in the same hometown.
Right.
Now they go around. Your families are spread out all over the country. They have different venues that they do. They go to college in different places.
Sure.
And so here in Hilton Head, well, we might be sitting here in Hilton Head, but someone might have family 200 miles away, 2,000 miles away. And so to have a burial where you're going to bring those people together in a finite amount of time.
Okay. Oh, that's true.
Yeah. But when you cremate, you can say, okay, well, we're not going to do that this week. We can do it next week or next month.
So it's more convenient.
Sure, it's more convenient. It's a lot less expensive.
Are there typical services, or is there a typical protocol for the way things happen? If, let's say, for example, someone's in hospice or there's an accident, or I don't even know what the protocol is.
Well, hospice,
if there is one,
usually if someone's in hospice, you know that's going to be a limited amount of time.
Okay.
And the hospices here are so good.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're so good. And they will come in and they'll say, look, maybe your mom has 6 months. Maybe my mother was in hospice a day and a half.
Okay.
And so we thought it was going to be longer, but it wasn't. But when you get to that point, then you know that it's probably time to maybe make a phone call, get the family together and agree on what's going to happen. The worst thing that can happen is someone dies, and you come into the funeral home and you have 3 kids or 4 kids, and 2 people say we're going to bury and 2 people say we're going to cremate. And now, now that's just not good.
Is it important to have a relationship with the person who's managing and handling the funeral?
I think so.
I do too.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's what we try to do, is we try to go old school. I think I did something after the hurricane, when the hurricane was there, and we had a lady in our cooler, and there was a little story written, and I didn't evacuate because I couldn't leave her.
Right.
And it turned out that the son called me on Saturday. The hurricane hit Saturday morning. He called Saturday and said, how'd mom make it through the storm? And what am I going to say? I don't know. I'm in Atlanta. I'm in Charlotte, right?
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that.
Yeah. So I have an obligation to that person. And anyhow, we said that our differences were the same. We're the same as that old school funeral director that you meet and play golf with, that he goes to your Rotary, he goes to your PTA meetings. You meet him in the grocery store, and you stop and talk. And that's just something that
kind of trusted professional, for lack of a better word.
Well, why not? That's would be your doctor. If you saw someone like that, you'd stop and talk to him. You wouldn't just walk past him in the grocery store or at church. And we do a lot of stuff with the church. We do a lot of stuff with the community. We do a lot of stuff with veterans, and that's important, because I think it's not just giving back, but it's being part and recognizing and honoring people for who they are while they're alive.
What's really interesting to me is when my mom was dying, it was, brothers, sisters, grandkids, the whole bit. It was like you became part of the family.
You made it so easy to do that.
Well, for a couple of months, literally, we'd drive by and run in, and just to say hello. And I think what surprised me the most, and everyone, was how you made the whole process seamless. And and grieving was wonderful. You were allowed all of that, but there was also an element of, I don't want to say fun, but just celebration of life. Is that a good way to say it? Yes.
I think a lot, like in your case, familiarity. I mean, your husband Mike and I were out there throwing knives at a tree.
Do you know, I still remember that. That's so funny when you
I
really
brought
talk
you wild
about
boar
it.
meat.
Exactly.
Stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's developing relationships that you don't get when you get online and type in something like that.
Stay with us. Hang on. Okay. We're going to come right back in 30 seconds just to chat a little bit more.
Okay.
With Jim Keith. Hi, I'm Dr. Debbie Lines. Design elements are psychologically and physically supportive and conducive to health and wellness. To learn more about what Lines on Design can do for you, for more information on certified aging in place and facilitative and supportive design, look for us at linesondesign.com. That's LYNES on design.com. We are back with my friend Jim Keith, and we are talking in this session, or in this segment, I should say, about the pre-needs of people. And why is that so important? And what does that mean?
Well, pre-need basically encompasses pre-planning your funeral.
Okay.
Or your parents' funeral, or someone like that. Now, what happens is perhaps you have an idea, but what you want to be done when you die,
yes.
But you haven't communicated that to your kids. So your kids, you don't talk about it. It isn't something at Sunday dinner you say, hey, here, I'm going to be cremated. I'm going to be tossed off the back here.
Right. Viking funeral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you don't talk about that.
Right.
But it's so important that you sit down and just talk to your kids and let them know what you want.
Well, it was really interesting, Jim. About a month ago, I went to my financial advisor, and she goes, you're 66. I'm wondering if you want to consider, when you die, what you want that to look like. And I'm like, no, thank you. And she's like, well, let's revisit this again. And it was funny because your voice to me was resonating.
Well, you can if you want to talk to a financial planner.
Okay.
People come to me all the time. Some people prepay and some people don't. And I will tell them there are advantages and disadvantages to both.
Okay.
The advantages to prepaying, for instance, let's say you come into me and you give me $2,000.
Okay.
And that's going to be for a cremation. And you prepay it. Well, I don't take control of that money. It goes into an irrevocable insurance policy. That means that, and I guarantee that no matter how long you live or what happens to my prices, that I will never come back to your family and say, hey, give me more money.
Got it.
And cremation rates or prices went up $200 and death certificates went up $300 and, give me some more money. Well, I don't do that. I hope that the interest in that insurance policy stays current with inflation rates. And usually it does. It's very close. Now, the good thing about that also is if you prepay and people are living longer and they can go through their money faster.
Yes. One less thing to worry about.
Yeah, because once you get into the Medicaid situation or you have to go into assisted living and you're out of money, then they start looking at your assets. Well, anything that you have put away for a burial is not touchable.
Okay. Is that true? Okay.
Yeah. So that's good to know. That is good to know. And we do a lot of that too. Now I get a lot of people will be calling and saying, hey, mom's going to go on Medicaid. On Tuesday, I have to come get rid of her money. Well, that's a great problem if you're in business.
Exactly.
I'll help you do that. I'll help you do that. But that's just something. Now, the disadvantages of prepaying is you can't get that money back.
Okay.
Let's say not every family is the Brady Bunch.
Okay.
So you put away, say, $10,000 for a burial. You die. Maybe one of your kids who is less than stellar decides that he wants to take that $10,000, cremate you, and take the other $8,000.
Oh.
If you prepay and do it in advance, they can't do that.
Okay. Oh, that makes
sense. And you make it irrevocable. You can't do that. And it happens. Not everybody's a Brady Bunch, like you said.
Right, exactly.
But they do that. Now, if you don't prepay, then say my costs go up.
All right.
And the price goes up over 10, 15 years, then you have to pay the price at the going rate.
Right.
So if you have money, if you have a good amount of money in the bank, if you have life insurance, then maybe you don't necessarily need to
To
prepay.
prepay.
But you
Okay.
should
Got
always
it.
prearrange. You should
Okay.
always write something down and say, this is what I want.
And what does that look like? What are some things that you should say? I mean, is it that what music I want? Do I
Well,
want to
if
be
you're going to have a
cremated?
service, yeah. But
Okay.
the main things are I going to be cremated or buried? Those are
Okay.
the two biggest things.
All right.
And then, are we going to have a service somewhere? What are we going to do with the ashes? The technical term now is cremated remains, but what are we going to do with the cremated remains? You have three basic things you can do. You can keep them, you can scatter them, or you can bury them.
Okay.
Now, they have funny things. You can put them into shotgun shells. You can put them into fireworks.
Oh, that's
cool.
cool.
You can make them into diamonds. You can put them on a reef and make artificial reefs with them if that's what you want.
Really?
Mm-hmm. But all that stuff stems from the cremation rate, because the people who were making all the money in the 80s and the early 90s by selling caskets don't sell as many caskets anymore.
So there's now the creative product.
Yeah, they're trying to create product because there's another need out there. It all stems from the cremation rate.
Which it really is interesting. One of the things that you were so good with us about is you really acted as sort of a point person and also as a resource guiding us to wherever we needed to be.
Yeah.
Do you find that you do that quite often?
Yeah. I mean, my title is funeral director. I'm a funeral director. Not really a mortician or an undertaker, but they do the same thing. But a funeral director does that. They direct the family. You try to take charge, point them in the right direction.
Okay.
It's not like herding cats.
Right.
Sometimes it can be.
Sure.
But you want to keep them going. You already know where they want to get to. You just try to get them to that point in a way that they get there on their own and they get there without undue stress, and they don't have to make extra decisions. And you don't want them calling their sisters or brothers and saying, what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? Pretty much you just say, this is what's going to get done. If anyone has an issue, then we'll address it. And it works out good.
How many, what percentage do you think of folks are living here now who, when they die, want to go home or live out of town? Or
a lot of people will go out of town. If they're going to be cremated, they'll be cremated here and then maybe buried in Michigan or Ohio or Kentucky or Pennsylvania or somewhere like that. If they're going to be buried, then most of the time we would embalm here and then ship them up to whatever. Like last year, I went to Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia, Tennessee, and Georgia, all within about a 3-month stretch. Now, I do that because if I drive that person, for instance, an airfare to any of those states is probably going to be about $650.
Okay.
And then you have to hire a funeral home on the other end. They're going to charge you $2,500.
Okay.
I can do it for, let's say, $1,200.
Okay.
And I save you the airfare, and I save you the price, half the price of the other place. And I make money that I wouldn't normally make, and you save money that you were going to spend. And so it's able to really help the family and say, I'll just take your mom. That way you have continuity of service too.
It's interesting. I don't know if this is interesting. And again, oftentimes I think this is a subject that for many people is pretty difficult, but I think we all have the same question. When your loved one dies and they're at home, because we're talking about aging in place. So my father, mother, sister, brother is here at home. And what is the protocol? What do you do?
Well, if they're
not
at home,
you, but any of us, what do we do? Do we call 911?
Well, see, that's the thing. If you're under hospice care, then you call the hospice.
Okay.
And the hospice will, if they're not already here, they will come here and pronounce.
Okay.
Then they will call me, or you can call me or give me a heads up, but I can't do a thing until someone comes and pronounces.
Okay.
If the person is not under hospice care and say just dies without any warning, then you call 911. The advantages or the disadvantages of that are the fire trucks and the ambulances and the police are going to come and the coroner's going to come, and it's just a big production. And that's the disadvantage of that, but you have to do it.
Do people call and rely on you and ask you about things like their will or law or probate, or are you?
They ask me, but I don't answer those questions because I'm not an attorney.
Okay.
And I don't want to give advice that's not correct. And
Okay.
the laws are a little different. I came down from Delaware and Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And the South Carolina laws are going to be a little bit different on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get into that. So I have a couple attorneys that I really like that are very fair, and
Mm-hmm.
I give them the notice and the number, and they call them.
Well, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to come back. Can we talk about some trending that's going on in this field, if you will? Terrific.
For more podcast episodes, links, information, and media inquiries, please visit our website at aginginplacepodcast.com as we transition through life with the comfort and ease you deserve. Discover how you can create a home that will adapt to you as you journey through life and the changes it will bring. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as our host, Debbie Lines, and her expert guests discuss relevant topics to creating a home for all decades in life. Don't miss our weekly episodes of Aging in Place podcast for every stage in life.
We are back here with Jim Keith, and we're going to talk about what really happens to the body after death.
Well, ultimately, you have to decide the end process, the end disposition. Is it going to be cremated or buried? So if it's going to be buried and you're going to have a viewing, and we embalm.
Okay.
And then you have a casket and a viewing if you want. If you're going to be buried without a viewing, then you don't necessarily have to embalm.
Okay.
Now, in the old days, prior to about 1985, anytime someone died, the funeral director showed up and he took them back and he embalmed them, and then you came in and you picked out a casket whether you wanted it or not.
Okay.
And all that kind of stuff changed when the FTC got involved, because funeral directors,
What's the FTC?
Federal Trade Communications.
Thank you. Okay.
They got involved with regulating some things that funeral directors did. And a lot of it was bad.
Oh, okay.
It was just arbitrarily charging outrageous amounts of money without giving the family a choice.
Got it.
Now we are very regulated. We have to disclose in writing at the time of arrangements what your options are, what are required by law, and what are not required by law. And I think it's good for everybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to be buried, then we go to the cemetery. We get a vault. A vault is the concrete case that the casket goes in at the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
They're required by just about every cemetery in every state now.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because if you were to put a casket in the ground without a vault, over a period of time, not very long, maybe just a few days or a few weeks, that ground would really settle down, and you could collapse the casket. And you don't want to go to the cemetery and see all these
divots and holes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it's a cremation, here in South Carolina, we can't cremate without a death certificate. So we have to get a death certificate filed first. And the way that evolves is when you come in to make arrangements with me, I get all the vital statistics for the deceased: parents' names, mother's maiden name, place of birth, social security, highest level of education, occupation, that kind of stuff. And then I put it on the computer, and depending on who's going to sign that death certificate, it could be a doctor, it could be the coroner.
Okay.
I hit the little send button and it goes to that person. Then they review it. They pull the medical file and say, okay, she had COPD or heart disease or stroke or something like that. Then they'll fill in their little part, hit the send button again, and it notifies me. Then we go pick up a death certificate, take that with the paperwork we need for a cremation. The coroner signs off and gives us a cremation authorization.
A little personal anecdote. Part of the reason I chose you, not only because you're so articulate and you know this nationally, but also because when my mom was dying, we spent quite a bit of time together. And I must say I was not thrilled to meet you. But then when I did, it really took a shift. The whole process of my mom dying took a shift for my entire family for these reasons. You handheld us through the entire process, from taking my dad to different areas where my mom could live after she died, whether it was, the National Cemetery. Mm-hmm. And something you taught me there was about a national cemetery.
Oh, the national cemeteries, what a great deal for people. If you are a veteran,
listen to this.
If you are a veteran, an honorably discharged veteran, you can go into any national cemetery and be buried for free along with your spouse. Now, that's a big deal, because if you go buy a grave in just about any a cemetery, it's going to be at least $2,000. It's going to be $1,500 to open that grave. If you get one of these big corporate cemeteries, they're going to be $2,500 or $3,000. The vault's going to be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500, and then your marker. And you get all that for free at a veteran cemetery.
And I think for my dad, it was such a gift because A, it gives him a place to go.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was interesting, Jim, is my parents lived in Ohio all their lives. And so the big consideration, well, my dad was like, well, we're taking my mom home. And you sat and talked with him for hours about the kids come here. Everyone comes here. You want to continue to visit your wife here. So I think that what people don't realize is that there's a whole process to really what you do.
There is a process, but it's not cookie cutter. It's tailored to individual families. Like you were real easy to get. I knew you before your mom died.
Right.
And so I kind of knew where you were coming. And then coming over here in your house and your whole place here is so welcoming. And I haven't come over here where there hasn't been 6 cars out there and 20 people around
and livestock.
Yeah, that's right. Chickens and
exactly.
And that's cool and that's so welcoming. But there are also people that are very standoffish that always have been wary of dealing with anyone they don't know, that they feel like someone's going to try to take advantage of them or maybe pull one over on them or something like that. And unfortunately, they're out there, but you have to deal with those people differently than I deal with you.
Right, but your gift was helping my dad and my brothers and sisters who didn't really know you, sort of helping them understand the process in ways that we all could understand because it was different for everyone.
Yeah.
So I think for many of us, we're very grateful, at least for my family. And I think it was such a learning process. It demystified it. I'm not so scared now of the whole process, and I think that's amazing. And I know, go ahead.
No, I was going to say one of the things that you just touched on, that's what a funeral director does. Now, if you go into your little funeral homes up in your little towns where you grew up and stuff like that. That's what a funeral director does. Unfortunately, trends in funeral service have been consolidating.
Got it.
These corporations show up. So you call me, I answer the phone 24 hours a day.
Correct.
Someone dies, I'm here.
Correct.
I make the funeral arrangements. I handle the funeral. I go to the cemetery. I'm there 24 hours, 7 days a week, forever when you have a question.
Yes, that's true.
You have my cell phone number that you can text me, which you do.
Yep, which we have. Yeah.
And then that's being a funeral director. But the corporations come in and all they want to buy up places. It's all volume. You're just, you're 2020 01 64. The 64th person who died in January of 20. That's who you are.
So there are companies that are coming in to do that. So you need to pay attention.
You got to pay attention. You got to say, are you locally owned? If you are not if they're not locally owned, then I'm just going to say beware because you're going to pay way, way, way more. Just for example, I know the local funeral home that was just purchased.
Really?
Just purchased by a corporation. And one of the employees came to me and he said, man, we had these urns that we were selling for $200. They marked them up after the acquisition to $600.
Oh, that's taking advantage of vulnerable people. I hate that.
But, so for instance, you call corporate, and it's not just here in Hilton Head, it can be anywhere. You're going to get an answering service after hours. Then they're going to page an on-call person. Then they're going to dispatch a removal team or transfer team to come to your house. So now you've spoken to an answering service, you've spoken to a funeral director, maybe. You've spoken to 2 people that who knows who they are. They just happen to be working that night. Then you go in the next day to make arrangements, probably meeting somebody else. Now 3 or 4 days down the road, you're going to go to church and they're going to meet someone else. And there's no way that continuity is not good for developing relationships or you having a warm, fuzzy feeling. No,
in a really tough time.
Yeah.
And here I thought you were going to talk about trends like putting ashes in golf balls.
Well, we did that. So you brought that up. But yeah, I had a very good friend who, while she was alive and before she was sick, said, whenever I die, I want to be in a golf ball. And I poo-pooed that, thinking, good, I'm glad I don't have to worry about this. And then she got pancreatic cancer and died. So I found a golf ball company that would cut the golf balls in half, hollow them out, print her name on it, and they shipped them to me, and we put her ashes in the golf balls and then glued them shut. And each one had a little sleeve, a little cardboard box with it. And then we went out and we had a service over at Hague Point in the ocean, and we just threw the golf balls in the water.
Well, and I told you that when I would go to the funeral home, it would actually be a lot of fun because there was so much cool stuff to see.
Yeah.
And a lot of people love to sprinkle or spread ashes. To share some of the things that people do because it's really cool.
Yeah. We some of the stuff is cool and not so cool. I've had people put cell phones in the casket and not tell me. And then had a service and ring, 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 ring. You know, and the thing is, you can put anything you want in the casket. You just got to tell me.
Yeah.
They'll put golf balls, whiskey bottles, mini bottles, and then not tell you. You know, they're up there at the casket. You know, we're so sorry to see you sliding stuff under the blanket. Then you go up the stairs at the church, and it goes clang, 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 and you just go, okay, guys, what'd you put in there?
Yeah, what's in there now?
We're sorry.
Oh, that has to be fun. I bet you've got some fun stories to tell.
Yeah, there are some stories, but you know, a lot of it is just trying to go with the flow and let people put in. I buried my grandfather with his favorite putter and a couple
did you
golf
really?
balls. Yeah, I wish I had that putter back now because
it's probably valuable.
Yeah, it probably was.
I saw something. Was it a fish? No, it was a turtle.
Oh, the turtle.
I love this.
Yeah, this turtle is a biodegradable turtle, and these people painted it. And this guy who died was a waterman around here in Hilton Head. And so they came in and they got this turtle and they painted it. It really looks cool. And then we put the ashes in. They went out to the beach and they took the turtle out on a paddle board.
Yeah.
And we put it in the water, and a real sea turtle came up and nudged it.
I know. You said it was so cool.
Yeah.
So how to bring beauty to someone's life?
You have to remember, I mean, I'm going to say this as a Christian, realize that, you know, if someone dies, they're in heaven. And they're in a better place. And when we grieve for ourselves. Because if you really want to grieve, that's who you grieve for. You shouldn't grieve for someone that's in heaven or in a better place. And sometimes you see people that have just suffered so long. And, you know, death, although it's tough to deal with, is best. It's best.
And it's part of life.
Yeah, it is part of life. But so many people cling on and, you know, they fight it. And those are the most difficult people to deal with. But when you have someone that's, you know, in a good place and we can make a celebration of life and we can say, look what great things this person did. Look at all the people she or he touched.
When someone comes in, do you consider culture? Do you ask for cultural mores or norms? For example, if it is a Jewish funeral or if it's a Buddhist or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I've done all those. I've done Jewish, I've done Buddhist, I've done Muslim, and you have to be cognizant of what the
culture is.
Yeah, you can't. But one of the best ways to do is just ask them, and you can say, "Hey, I haven't done a Jewish service in 5 or 6 years. Are you Orthodox or are you Reformed?"
How interesting.
You know, so what do we have to do? And maybe you just touch base with the rabbi. You know, that the Muslims are going to bury the next day or that day if they possibly can. And that person who's deceased gets your best effort no matter what. And that's just something that's what a professional will do.
Do you find that people want to put ashes in urns? Is that what most people choose?
Oh, they put it in urns. They scatter it. We have those little mini urns you talked about.
Yeah, I love those.
We had a friend who died. My wife took her to Aruba, scattered some of her ashes in Aruba. We have people that, you know, the shotgun shells. I've done the shotgun shells, the jewelry, making them into diamonds.
Right. That's cool.
It is cool, but it is so expensive. It's just, I don't know that I have a hard time spending that kind of money. But.
Well, who knew that talking about a subject like death could be entertaining as well as engaging and educational?
You did, because we've done this for a while.
This is true, and I'm very grateful for you.
Yeah.
Jim Keith, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Before we go, can you give us your name and phone number, how we can reach you, and perhaps your website?
Yep, it's Jim Keith, Keith Funeral Services, 63 Arrow Road on Hilton Head Island. And my website is keithfuneral.com. My personal email is jim@keithfuneral.com, and our phone number is 843-715-4584.
Thank you.
And I answer the phone all the time. So.
And I can attest to that. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank all of you for joining us here on Aging in Place podcast. Have a wonderful week. I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine, Tracy. Tracy is naturally curious and always creative. And when we were doing the Aging in Place podcast, she said, there are so many quick tips that I can think of offhand. My response, who knew? She's going to be with us every week, giving us a quick tip and a hint that is a practical application.
Thanks, Debbie. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Again, when aging in place, it is all about your needs and not your wants. Read that magazine and then donate it to your hairdresser. Stacks of magazines on the floor can be a little slippery when stepped on. Give your adult children your parents' china you have buried in the closet. The pleasure of them using the china while preparing you a dinner will bring back stories for you to share. And don't cringe if a plate gets broken. Remember the story Beauty and the Beast? Chip the teacup? That cup had plenty of character than the cup that didn't. My mother served us Thanksgiving on a platter that had so many chips and cracks, we all wondered how it could hold the turkey. The good part? For each crack and chip, my mother could tell you how it happened. How my dad jumped and tried to scare her as she was reaching into the cabinet to retrieve the platter. The crack from my older brother dropped a gravy bowl on it and splattered everyone on the table. So give it away. Simplify what's around you. Who knew the way to simplicity can be so messy?
Jim Keith from Keith's Funeral Home was absolutely amazing to talk to. And one of the things I learned, and the takeaway I want for all of you, is to really know that talking about death and dying is a natural part of life, and that hiring someone that you trust and develop a relationship with is going to be really important to celebrate the legacy of your loved one. And Jim shared today that one of the most important things to remember is developing a relationship with your funeral director can really be helpful to make a tough time easier. I want to thank all of you for joining us here today on Aging in Place. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Aging in Place podcast is hosted by Debbie Lines and produced by Henrik de Gior. If you have any comments or questions, send an email to debi@aginginplacepodcast.com. We would love to hear from you. If you're interested in advertising or sponsoring this podcast, email us at pr@aginginplacepodcast.com. Thank you for listening to Aging in Place podcast.